You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. Hey chillers, welcome back to another episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia.
Hi everybody. Thank you for returning after the last episode that was a bit of a shit show, wild ride, especially by the end.
It was a wild ride, but hopefully everybody enjoyed it, because that's what we like to think is part of the charm of this. It's not polished.
One word for it.
Right, one word for it. So my first thing to say, and because we're doing these episodes back to back, you don't have any book recommendations.
You're correct.
So where the hell's my bell? Ding, ding, ding. I do need to grab the bell, though.
It's right behind.
I know, and I'm too lazy to grab it, but I will then. So I wanted to say something that I think we briefly touched upon was I told you that I made a 90s nostalgia playlist.
Yes.
Right. So, and I know you're not a huge fan of it, but I used ChatGPT to help me curate this playlist.
Right.
And it was weird because, and we've talked about this before, there are certain songs from certain movies in the 90s that just definitely, they have that 90s nostalgia feel.
Oh, a lot of good freaking music on soundtracks from the 90s.
Right.
90s soundtracks are a different breed.
So, and it's kind of hard to explain what they are, but you know it when you hear it.
If you know, you know.
Sure. So I gave ChatGPT 4 to 5 songs, and I said to it, I'm looking for a 90s nostalgia playlist, but I said, what I want you to do is look at all of these songs and see what they have in common, what are their similarities, give me the characteristics of these songs, and then provide me 30 more.
Jeez Louise.
Right.
A lot of specifications.
Right. Well, that's what it's for.
You want what you want.
And I wanted it. Right. So, an example of one of the ones I did was from, of course, the Beethoven movie.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then the sequel where he meets...
Not as familiar with that, I have to admit.
The sequel is where he gets his girlfriend or whatever.
What's her name?
I don't know. I haven't seen it in about 20 years. But it's not that I'm opposed to rewatching it. It's just, it's never popped up in, I've never thought, you know what I should do? Go back and watch Beethoven 1 and 2. But I actually, when I was looking up the song, I did, when I was on Amazon, I saw they're up to Beethoven 6 now.
Who the hell
They
knew?
never stopped, I guess. So.
Well, and I guess it's who? The kids? Who are the parents? What are we doing here?
I'm sure it's none of the original people at this point. But anyway, so one of the songs that I referenced on this list was the one where Dolly Parton and, is it James Ingram, I want to say?
I wouldn't know.
All right. Sing...
a duet.
Yes. And it's one of those soulful, kind of love songs, which is not my thing at all, but it's 90s. So it's it's that one that's on the day I fall in love.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah,
song.
of course.
Yes.
So I'm that is 90s to me.
Right.
So it gave me a list of so many wonderful songs. The one from Casper came up.
Oh my
I didn't
gosh.
ask for it, but it gave me the Remember Me This Way song.
Right.
A couple of Boys to Men was thrown in there.
Nice.
Which is that's a 90s vibe.
Totally. Nostalgic.
Right. So it got me to thinking. I've just thought this would be a fun question to ask.
Carrie Bradshaw.
No. There's no right or wrong answer, but when I ask this, I want you to answer it quick.
You're asking me a question.
I am, if you can believe it.
I barely can. All right, fast.
Right, a
Speedo.
fast.
Ba-boom.
Right. Okay, so when you think of the 90s as a decade, what season comes to mind? Go.
Summer.
Me too.
Interesting.
Now, why do you think that is?
I have a lot of good memories that stick out that, like, extended family would participate in, like that we would all be together, and also little bits and bobs that my mom and I would do, that my grandmother and I would do. That, and I would say winter. Those are the two. I think too, like, I was outdoors a lot, although I was outdoors like a lot every season, so I guess that was silly. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find it interesting because when I listen to those songs, I specifically feel like I'm in the summer.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, I'm just telling
Which
you.
I didn't think that's what you asked me.
No, it's not.
Okay,
It's
okay.
not. But I'm saying those songs to me represent the 90s. So when I hear those songs, I think of the 90s, and I think of it's like in my head, I think of the summer. I think of like amusement parks. You know, I think of swimming pools.
I was definitely thinking of the pool.
Just, yeah, I don't know. And I'm wondering if it's because of the ages we were in the 90s. Like, you remember summer comes to mind because you weren't in school, and like, so you
Right.
had, I don't know. I feel like I live in New York City all of a sudden. I mean, something is happening outside this window. There are people yelling.
A lot of
There's
things.
cars honking. So we apologize for any noises you may have heard during this. And I know this question means nothing to anybody, but I just thought it was a fascinating question to
I
ask.
completely agree.
So
Keep them coming, man.
I don't have any more.
All right, fine. Let me ask
Oh,
this. You were almost
Almost.
in the clear,
Damn.
almost out of here. Yeah.
go ahead.
Me. As a child, was your favorite season fall, or did that evolve as you aged? And multifaceted question. Whatever your favorite season was as a child, tell me why. Shami, what things occurred? Like, what made it your favorite?
I got
Places
it.
you... All right.
No, I would say fall was not, purely because it meant school was happening again, and I was not a fan of school.
Right.
So the idea, like everything I love about fall now, I loved about it back then too, but it always had that underlying connotation of like, here we freaking go. And that's what that's my favorite thing about, I think being an adult is that you get to just enjoy the seasons now. It doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? It's just, I guess teachers would find that different, but in terms of like for most jobs, doesn't,
Good point.
it's like, okay, it's autumn. Let's enjoy autumn. We're still doing the same job type
Correct.
of thing. So I think my favorite season though was probably winter.
As a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think I liked playing in the snow. Obviously Christmas was magical. It was always like cozy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that it was winter, but oddly, I feel like now the opposite has happened. As an adult, I'm like, whenever I see snow, I just think that means shoveling.
Welcome to adulthood.
Right. And I really, if I could magically have those sidewalks that just melt, and I've looked into it and it's thousands of dollars, that would be fantastic to just say, oh, it's snowing. Look how beautiful it is. Flip on a switch. And
Be
you never have to
done.
do it. That would be fantastic.
Right.
Anyway, so,
Right.
and you?
Well, I am going to go with fall. I have so I did look forward to school starting again. And I like what I touched on about summer memories, pool, doing stuff with my mother, things with my grandmother, our extended family, what we would do, like those sorts of, not traditions exactly, but just themes of getting together and like the summer months. I did enjoy that. So maybe summer was like second or third. I'd say winter was like second. Spring kind of isn't on my radar as a kid.
Spring never did much for me.
Yeah, like I can't think of any moments, but fall, I loved Halloween. I loved autumn. I loved the things at school related to that season that we would do. And like we had this like thing called the bazaar. And it would be basically like a craft fair that went on.
Right.
I don't even think it was all week. I think it was like several days. But I remember we would go as a class, and then my mom would take me once, like one day after she was done at work, and like we would walk through it together. I freaking loved that. I always looked forward to that. I believe the book fair
I mean, that was a time.
Right. And I think
What
that
a
was in the
time.
fall. I think it was like shortly after school starting again. I might be remembering that wrong. Halloween, like I said, just the weather in general. And then the looking forward to going back to school, then like that kind of intensified as I got older because of tennis season. Like tennis season starts at the very end of summer, goes into fall. I associate like memories with like matches and like going away to away matches and like different
As
traditions.
one does.
Right. And different like traditions there. Then like I'm thinking of college and like I always looked forward to going back to school and like I went to school a distance away and also again tennis season and like fall just I feel like holds a lot.
All right. Well,
Over the
then so
years.
nothing's changed for you.
Well, I guess. I think I enjoyed summer more as a kid and it's like gradually decreased. I still like it, but I don't like love it.
Yeah, and I would say winter has almost become my least. Well,
Yeah.
oh, but spring is real close behind.
That
with
you
that.
dislike it.
Not that I dislike it, but that it doesn't do much for me.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. But anyway, well, let's stop the torture.
For these poor people.
Absolutely, for
held
these poor
hostage.
listeners. And let's get into the case. So for me, I feel like this case is kind of like a back to basics for me because, you know, I've done Clinton Road and then I did the Suicide Forest and,
Right.
you know, so I haven't
Places.
right. So I'm going back to a person, a case that's a case that I've heard about for a while. So here we go. So this is going to be the case of Brandon Swanson. I did send you his picture.
He looks like a sweet dear of a soul.
Yes.
Right. I said that oddly, but you get my drift.
I get it. So a little bit of background on Brandon. Brandon Swanson. So he was 19 years old.
Young.
Yes. And he was from Marshall, Minnesota.
Like Rose.
Yes.
An island.
He disappeared in the early hours of May 14th, 2008.
Early hours. Early hours.
Early hours?
Weird things happening. I take that to be not 7 a.m., 6 a.m., but like 3-ish.
Okay.
1 to
I wasn't
3-ish.
aware that
I
was
think that's a bit of a theme.
bell-worthy.
You don't think it would be on the bingo card? Early
I
hours?
didn't think.
All right.
But hey, I guess it is now.
Maybe I should redact. Or not, I guess.
All
You're
right.
joining in.
I'm joining in now.
Fine, thank you. I apologize if I jumped the gun, but I do
think you
it
did,
fits.
to be honest.
All right.
Fine. He was born
Yeah.
He was born January 30th, 1989. So Brandon was known as a responsible and level-headed young man. He had recently completed a 1-year program where he was studying wind turbine technology
Those things are beautiful, and you know it.
at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. So he was described by friends and family as easygoing, friendly, and independent. Brandon lived with his parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, and he had a close-knit relationship with both of them. So he was the type of person that kept his parents informed about his whereabouts and his activities.
A communicator.
Right, like the opposite of you, I would assume, in college.
I absolutely kept in touch with my mother, and
Well, you didn't tell her you lost your cell phone. So, which is it?
I sure did tell her. I eventually told her.
Because she sleuthed it out.
By a stranger.
Exactly.
I didn't want to worry her until I figured out what was going on.
Right. Fine. So anyway, yeah. So he kept them informed about his whereabouts and activities, which makes this stranger just because of like the way that this case kind of reveals itself. Mm-hmm. So at the time of his disappearance, he had just, like I said, finished his program at the college, and now he was planning for his next steps in continuing his education. And he wanted to start a career in this renewable energy like sector.
Right.
So nothing unusual or alarming really to report here. He wasn't, from all accounts, he wasn't acting strange before his disappearance or anything like that.
Anti-bingo card. Not bingo card worthy.
Right, not Bellworthy.
Sorry.
I think bingo card worthy might be a little long, but Bellworthy
it's a
might
mouthful.
be okay. Right.
Right. Thank you.
And I was saying that because of like that case with like Terrence Woods, where he was like a little like down, a little like acting a little strange. Like that's not the case here with Brandon.
Right, nothing to see here.
No. So on the day of the disappearance, so it's March. No, it's May. I keep wanting to go with March.
You want it to be March. His birthday.
It's May 13th.
Okay.
2008. The day before Brandon Swanson disappeared. He was just kind of doing the typical end of school year activities with his friends. Brandon had attended a couple of different gatherings to celebrate, the end of the year. Earlier in the evening, he was in Canby, Minnesota, and he was attending a party with some friends from this West Community Technical College. So, and like this part of the story reminds me of the Springfield 3, where the two girls were starting to like party hop.
Yes.
So that's what's going to start happening here.
Yeah.
So after spending some time in Canby, Brandon left around midnight. So now we are officially on to May 14th, which would have been the day of his disappearance. Brandon left around midnight to head back to his parents' home in Marshall, Minnesota, which was about 30 miles away. So on the way, though, he decided that he was going to stop at another friend's house in a small town by the name of Lynd, which is Lynd, Minnesota, which was in the direction closer to home. So at both gatherings, they were just like small, low-key gatherings. I mean, yes, they were celebrating the end of the school year, but they weren't like, blackout raves. So there were no reports of Brandon being intoxicated or behaving in a way that would raise any suspicion or concern. While it had been reported that he had been drinking, but I mean, that's obviously very typical. Everybody who was asked about it by police said he didn't seem very impaired or anything when he left either party.
So he could drive, he could function okay.
Yes, from those reports.
Right.
But I mean, I guess it's also like, are these kids going to be honest if they were really boozing it up? I don't know, but...
Booze. Right.
We're just going with that. So around 1:30 a.m., apparently that gets a bell. Right.
Good call.
On May 14th, Brandon leaves the house in Lynd and he's going to drive home. So he's made this trip, I mean, countless times before.
I kind of want to ring the bell to that.
Well, we got to start having...
But I didn't.
We have to be discerning
You're
here.
right. Not willy-nilly.
Right, because we could say, oh, this happened in America. Like, it can't be like that.
They were between ages 8 and 85.
Right. Oh.
All right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come up with a list of rules here because
God, I can't handle that, man.
I'm gonna give it to you. I'll laminate it and just hand it over.
Make sure the font is 24.
way. Like I said, so he's made this trip before. But what was interesting the first interesting part about this was that he made a decision that he was actually, well, I mean, we can assume he made the decision himself, that instead of taking the more straight route, he decided to take a more like rural detour.
I love a nice drive, man.
Well,
but
some of this
late,
wasn't even paved.
Dark. Yeah.
So it was like, it wasn't just like the scenic route. It was like, why are you going down this road?
That's like
literally
not
and
safe.
Figuratively, I suppose.
Right.
So
right.
But anyway, so his parents were at home asleep. They were unaware that anything out of the ordinary was happening. Meaning they were not expecting their son not to come home, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So after leaving the friend's house, he starts driving back. He decides to take this rural route. The first question that pops up here is the rural route, which I hate saying because it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But the alternate route that he took, like, why did he take that route? Because when you look at a map, it is definitely out of the way. Like, I mean, yeah, you're still going in the same general direction, but there was a much more straightforward way to go.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just so, this is, of course, an obvious statement. Or obvious, I don't know what.
Oh, there's a bell. If anything, there's one. You mean Talia's interrupting and she's not quite sure what she wants to say?
Like, in terms of, we'll never, I assume, be able to ask him any of this. And it's just frustrating where that could have literally been, oh, someone we're not aware of, which doubtful, I suppose, with his age and other friends and his family who it sounds like he was close to and open with. Did it just occur to him to go see somebody who, oh my gosh, they actually live down here, let me go do that real quick, to the extreme opposite of, did someone like kidnap him, or more so, I guess, carjack him, make him drive this way, he wasn't alone in the car. You know what I mean? Like, it could be so different.
Yes. Well, we'll get into a little bit more of why I don't necessarily think he got carjacked.
Okay.
But the thing was, some of the speculation is if maybe he, even just due to paranoia about maybe because he did have some drinks, did he want to avoid the police, like at a checkpoint or something, so he wanted to take like back roads instead of the more direct route. So sometime around 1:50 a.m., Brandon accidentally drives his car into like a little bit of a ditch. He was unsure of his exact location, but he believed that he was near the town of Lind.
How do we know all this?
What?
How do we know that he accidentally did this? How did we know that he thought he was in this town? How did we know any of those things?
Well, if you let me at least get into the case, I'd love to tell you. I'm just happy you haven't asked me statistics yet.
That could be on the bingo card.
Yeah, I guess that one could be.
Yeah.
But I don't want that on there because it will only encourage you to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
But thank you for asking.
Surely.
And let me just say, I believe accidentally because most people don't purposely drive into a ditch, I think is what they mean there. I don't, that's just my theory.
Okay.
Anyway, because he thought he was so close to home, he decided that he was going to call his parents for help, like to potentially see if they would come get him. Which, I mean, I guess he would do that really anywhere, but it was so late at night, but he thought he was so close, like, I guess that was his first instinct was to do that. So he calls his dad, Brandon Swanson, and explains, look at this. He explained it, that he accidentally went into the ditch.
That's how we know.
That's how we know.
Thank you for that.
That he'd gone off the road and he was stuck in a ditch. He didn't think that the situation was particularly serious, and he also didn't tell his dad that he was like hurt in any way.
Or that the car, like, that he blew out a tire, like it couldn't be driven. Right?
I don't think.
Okay.
So despite Brandon's belief that he was close to Lind, the location he was describing to his dad, though, did not match the area where he was telling his parents. Like what I'm saying is, he was in a rural farmland area, and that doesn't match up to
Lind.
Yes.
Okay.
But he was telling them that that's where he thought he was, and they, as you know, as good parents, they were like, "We're gonna get in the car and go. We're gonna get in the car and come get you."
God
like,
love
you know.
them.
So now we're gonna talk a little bit about the details of this phone call. So, because this is what makes this case really super fascinating and chill-worthy, in my opinion, is that the friends at the party were the last people to see him, but his parents were the last people to speak to him in real time as he disappears.
Those poor people.
Right. So, okay, so his parents are coming to get him, or so they think. So for approximately 47 minutes, Brandon remains on the phone with his parents.
The whole time?
Yes.
Oh, I have the chills. That is not what I thought you were going to say.
So they're on the phone with him. He's trying to direct them to his location. So he gets a little frustrated because they cannot find him. So Brian and Annette are driving to where they believe his location to be, but they see zero signs of their son anywhere or his car. So throughout the call, Brandon keeps reassuring them that he could see lights. And he was under the impression that these lights were coming from that small town that I mentioned of Lind.
Well, so wait. So
I'm not saying anything.
the parents, not thinking his description matched Lind, did in fact go to Lind, or were like, actually, we think he's in Meridian. We're going to go there.
No, they went to where he thought
Okay.
he was telling them he thought he
Okay.
was, even though they were thinking in their heads.
That doesn't sound
we
right.
don't know of a place that sounds like what you're describing.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, I don't know. But like I said, so he thinks he can see these lights. He thinks it's coming from the nearby town. So he's still like reassuring them that he's close to this town. But his parents continue, as they're driving around, they get more and more concerned because they're coming up completely empty here. So during the call, Brandon makes the decision that he's going to leave his car and he's going to start walking toward the lights that he could see in the distance.
I'm getting like alien vibes. Extraterrestrial.
Okay, well, maybe. So, but again, he's on the phone with his parents the whole time. So he tells his parents that he's going to meet them at a specific location in the town. Because again, he sees these lights. He just thinks, I'm just going to walk over there. They can meet me somewhere where I know where I am and where they know where I am. So Brandon's walking along the road, kept the phone line open with his dad. So just continuously talking to him as he's kind of like describing his surroundings. So Brandon, according to his parents, did not seem overly like distressed or panicked, but he was, like I said, frustrated that they could not find him. And I mean, I'm sure frustration can, I'm sure you can also kind of mask like a little bit of fear with frustration. If you're like, I don't want to be out here. Mm-hmm. It's pitch black. Like, where are my parents? I'm telling them where I am.
You want this to be over.
Right. Yes. So the most unsettling moment, though, that happens with this phone call is now we're at about 2:30 in the morning. He was walking through what he was describing to his dad as fields and farmlands. So his parents had reported him saying like he was making comments like, oh, I got to go over another fence, or like, well, now I'm in another field type of thing.
Right.
And he had also made mention of like, oh, I can hear running water.
Like a creek.
Like a river.
Uh-huh.
So, yes.
Well, that should have been a good clue for them of like, okay, we're not talking definitively. We are not talking Lind. We're talking such and such.
Right. Well, I don't know. But he makes that point to say that. Then, all of a sudden, he suddenly just shouts, oh, shit. And the line just remains open, but completely silent. Now,
I don't like any of this. I'm scaredy.
The line stays open for a while. They hear nothing else. They're like, one assumes they're calling his name. No response is coming back.
And no walking sounds,
Nothing.
Scuffling sounds, breathing.
No. Do you have any other adjectives you'd like to ask?
Those were actions.
Snorting.
Verbs.
Neighing. No. So just radio silence. So after a little bit, they hang up thinking that he lost service. And then they try to call him back. So they repeatedly try to call him, but Brandon never answers the phone, never picks it up again. There were no further signs of communication from him after him saying, oh shit. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind is, how did he say it? Was it like, oh shit? Or like, oh shit?
Oh, good point. Like stubbed your toe, ran into a bear. Quite a difference.
Right, yes.
My mind did go to animal. Right. Like I'm not thinking, oh shit. I'm thinking, oh shit.
Right. And that is how I would take it too, the way you're taking it. But I'm just saying, you never know.
You're right. You're right. But I don't think my mind also, though, like I said, didn't go to a person. I'm thinking animal.
Right. So at first his parents thought that he might have just dropped the phone or like I said, like lost signal. Right. But they're waiting and they're searching for him in this area with zero success. So now they start to panic. So they continue to try to call Brandon, and while they're like still searching these nearby roads for hours.
These poor people.
I know, very sad. But he was nowhere to be found. So finally at 6:30 a.m., after hours of searching.
And no sleep also,
Very good point.
In terms of the state these poor people must have been in.
Yes. Brian and Annette finally, not finally, but you know what I mean? Like
Right.
they've kind of like given up, like we need help.
Right.
So they report him missing to the authorities.
Well, I'm going to get my bell ready because I feel like you're about to say.
Oh,
so,
you got to get that bell ready.
son of a bitch.
Big time bell worthy.
I was going to say it's, 17 hours before the police decide to begin the searching, even though this man went missing literally live on the phone with his poor parents.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the police report, you can scroll down a little bit more, and I did give you a geo spot.
Oh, I love them. All right.
This is just an example of where his car was eventually found. It's obviously not the exact point, but very different from what most geospots we see.
I can't even find it. So.
Okay, fine.
I don't think it's in here. I'm like,
It definitely is.
Oh, here we are. Okay, hold on one moment. Okay. So farmland.
Right. Like
farmland,
very,
road,
very
paved highway road.
Yes, but like very, very open.
No trees,
Right,
no
none
dense,
of this dense
foliage.
Shit. Right. And it describes what he's saying. I'm walking through fields,
Yes.
like that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, that seems to check out.
Yes, agreed.
And then if you go down a little bit more on the notes, you will see that I also included the map of like where Canby is at the top from where he started the party, you know, and then Lind is all the way down there.
There we go. Okay. All right. So Canby is where he started. He did go to the circled places. What you have circled? He went to.
Yes, I think there were like he like had those different stops.
Okay. Which,
But
yeah.
the one of these circles, which I'll get to, well, I'm not gonna that's just a map right now.
Okay.
So.
I think it's like, this might literally mean nothing, but when you look at his sort of path, Lind was like a dip off. Not that he's not allowed
Yeah.
to do that, but it's kind of like, whoo, that
Yeah.
just kind of stands out.
Okay. It was reported to the police. So the search for Brandon does begin, but before it begins, the police did let his parents know that it wasn't unusual for college-aged boys to stay out all night on the last day of college classes. That, I think, is bell-worthy already by itself.
I agree.
Are you going to hit it? The one time I'm asking? Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
But
Yeah.
this next part, hang on to your nips because it's outrageous. They even went as far as to say that it was Brandon's quote unquote right to go missing.
We all. He wanted to start again.
They didn't say that.
Oh, shocker.
But so anyway, you know, and I know like it's not, none of this is funny, but you know, we try to keep it lighthearted, but
Right. It's outrageous.
it is ridiculous. And the idea that you could say that the police said this and okay, well, whatever, they're just doing their job. Like the statistics say this, but are they completely forgetting the fact that this kid's calling for help on the side of the road, looking for his parents? Like
Reached
that's
out.
pretty interesting information to
Yes.
just say, oh, he's out partying. No, he's calling his parents for help.
Trying to come home. Can you imagine the parents, like, I'm being sarcastic in all of this, but if they were, you know, at some sort of gathering a few months later and they're telling this story to extended family members or whomever and saying, well, you know, the police did say it's Brandon's right and we're going to respect that. Can you even imagine?
We're going to respect that.
Can you imagine having that conversation?
No.
I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
It completely is. So anyway, after they did inform them that it was his right to go missing, they did actually, though, start the search.
I'm shocked.
It began later that morning.
How big of them?
It started initially as a local search, and then it quickly escalated into a large-scale effort involving multiple law enforcement agencies,
Dogs.
search dogs, and volunteers. Thank
Dogs.
you. Thank you.
And volunteers, I suppose. But the doggos.
Yes, the dogs. So, okay, so the key elements of this disappearance. So, when authorities first received the missing person report, they initially treated the situation as just a case of a young adult potentially wandering off, assuming that Brandon would turn up once daylight arrived. However, when no signs of him emerged and his parents stressed the unusual nature of the situation, the search was intensified later that day. And the thing about this is, like, reporting the fact that the last words he said to them were, "Oh shit," does raise a little bit more concerns. So
Exactly, especially that, like, he came potentially upon danger. Like, it wasn't the worst thing. You know, he didn't yell out, "I'm about to be mauled," or "someone is coming at me with a knife," or whatever. Like, yes, it was very...
or even "I need help."
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
you know.
It was vague, and like you brought up...
Like, obviously caught very by surprise by in some form or another.
Exactly. And that, I think, very important distinction that you mentioned of, like, that could be said in different ways, but it certainly doesn't help matters that you can't then not only reach him afterwards, but find him.
Right.
Find him. And I hate that the parents were sort of like, it was such a question mark for them because they really didn't think he was where he said he was. He probably didn't realize where he was. That was wrong information, and it just wasted more time of trying to even be in the, or to successfully be in the exact location that he was even in. Like, it delayed things even more.
So if you want to scroll down again.
Could you ping cell phones back in, what was this, 2007, 8, you said?
You can. I don't know what. I don't think cell phone to cell phone, but the phone company could and did.
Oh, and did. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to scroll down, I have a picture of his vehicle. And I promise you, it is there.
I was gonna say I can't even get out of the map. Oh, it was a Corolla. I'm a master at identifying cars by backlights.
How about it?
Yeah. That does not look good, or like something he could have gotten himself out of.
No.
I mean, that car needs to literally be like tipped back, and it is not drivable. Not that it's damaged, but like it's not even
right. I mean, it looks like it's minimal damage,
yes.
but it's like, yeah, I mean, that would be,
he can't move it. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so they're doing the search. The first significant breakthrough comes when authorities do find Brandon's car, which was abandoned on a gravel road near Taunton, Taunton.
I'd say Taunton, yeah.
Taunton.
I'm like one of the locals. I don't enunciate. I'm above it.
But the thing is, this was nowhere near where he thought he was. Right? Like, not even close. The car was located in a very isolated area that was 20 miles away from the town of Lind, where Brandon had initially thought he was stranded.
Oh.
And what's weird about that is he grew up in all of these areas. Like, this was his, this was where he was from, like these little towns and areas. So, like, the fact that he thought he was somewhere that was actually 20 miles, like, away is a little bizarre.
Do you think, or do they think with their suspicion, that he was like pretty trashed? That like
well,
there
I don't
was
know,
heavy drinking?
Not really. I mean, not that I heard, but
right.
So anyway, the discovery of the car clarified that Brandon had been disoriented enough in some way, even if it just was location wise, though, to like completely misjudge where he was. But investigators noted no signs of damage to the vehicle, and it appeared that Brandon had driven off the road unintentionally into this ditch.
Right.
So the location of the car was also puzzling because it was surrounded by farmland, and the road itself, there were no like immediate hazards apparent. So it wasn't like he had. I mean, I guess an animal could have been in the road.
True.
But it wasn't like there was a fallen tree or like a big, I don't know, pothole or, something like that. So regardless of the fact that there were no hazards, another interesting thing about the location was that there was within eyesight of the car, there actually was a light that was present. And it was the light on top of a grain elevator.
What's that?
I was scared you were going to say that. I don't know. I think it's something that holds grain at a farm.
Yeah.
And it was viewable from where the car was. It had like a red light on top, which people were wondering, is that what Brandon saw that he thought was like the light from the town? Or did he think that that was his parents' tail lights? You know, like that. Good he call. Was like, because I think as they were looking for him, you know, that's why he decided to get out of the car, because he was like, I'll just come to you then. So I don't know if that's like, you know, maybe he thought they were just, but so much of it doesn't make sense, because his parents would have had to say, we're parked. Like, if the light isn't moving, then it's not their taillights if they're not parked. But, like, I don't know. So
yeah. Well, and even saying or hypothesizing is that the light that he thought was the town that he was seeing, what's red? You know what? Like, to me, I was thinking not a skyline, of course, out in this neck of the woods.
Yeah.
But just things that appear to be, oh, that's like a neighborhood. That's a community. That's a little tiny town. Like, something. I don't know about that either.
One of the things, okay, so when they find the car, one of the things that was super interesting about it was that Brandon, in his left eye, he was legally blind. And for reasons that are still unknown, he left his glasses in the car when he decided to get out and walk towards the lights he was describing that he saw.
I'm getting a weird paranormal vibe. Like, that makes no sense. He's on the phone with them. He sounds normal. He doesn't sound, even how I had asked you if they thought maybe there was speculation that he was under the influence of something. I feel like the fact that they were on the phone with him for so long, they would have suspected or made mention of it.
Right.
But why would he have ever chosen that, to do that with the glasses? It's not logical.
No. And I mean, it's already dark. You're already in a place you don't know, and you're just going to happen to not be able to see.
Right. Make it more difficult for yourself. I don't know about that. I
mean, you've already told me in the shower that you wish you had your glasses because you don't even know you have toes.
Correct. I have said it. And I meant it.
I believe you. So, I mean, I don't picture you saying, hey, I'm going to run to the 7-Eleven. I'm going to leave my glasses here. Anyway. So that was very interesting. Like I said, another one of the fascinating things that we already mentioned was just the weirdness of the fact that he was like certain he was in another area that he wasn't in. And so certain, in fact, that he was getting like basically annoyed that his parents weren't finding him in that area.
Right. And like you said, that he was familiar with all of these areas, really, for the most part. So
the search teams, so, you know, after they find the car, search efforts centered around the surrounding fields, obviously, the ditches and the various terrain. So the area was pretty much made up of very uneven ground, tall grass, and occasional waterways, which, of course, makes sense when he told his parents at one point that he heard running water. So there is a river that was located about a mile from where his car was found, and that became a focal point due to the possibility that Brandon like fell into the river. Included in the search, as we said, canine units. So search dogs were brought in early in the investigation. They picked up Brandon's scent near his vehicle and followed it for a short distance towards the west, which aligned with the direction that he said he was walking during the phone call. So the trail, however, just like abruptly stops at the edge of a riverbank. So, of course, that would lead you to believe maybe he like tripped and fell into the river and drowned, like tripped, said, oh shit, and just into the water.
I was thinking that as well, but don't you think the parents would have heard that water? Like the rushing of it? I mean, I don't know.
Right. Well, the other thing is one of the dogs specifically picked his scent up on the other side of the river. So at some point, I guess, this kid went through the river because the trail restarted on the other side. It didn't just end at the river for whatever reason. Take that as you will. But they did search the river. Nothing was found. No items of clothing, no cell phones, or anything that would say he fell in there or, drowned or, what have you. So the river was called the Yellow Medicine River.
Ooh.
And like I said, I mean, they even looked with sonar equipment. They also did use divers. But I guess the river wasn't that... I mean, at its deepest point, it was 10 feet. So it wasn't like a massively deep river. Even though 10 feet, that's deep enough for me. But you know what I'm saying.
I will say, just thinking of how dark this was out here and like imagining how that was... I told you how Ashley and I were away recently, and I don't remember like anything ever standing out to me so like boldly before about how dark it can be, but like in a rural area. And that's where we were, an area that was very rural. And it was crazy arriving at night, could not see anything. I mean, it was like farmland and no street lights, no close neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought we could see. I mean, we thought with like flashlights, we had a general idea of how things looked. And one of the dogs was pulling Ashley on the leash to like go sniff this one area of the yard. And she was like, oh, no, like, we're not going to go down there tonight. Like, let's just kind of pee and, like, get moving here. And, like, let's, we're going to go to bed. But didn't, like, say no for any other reason.
All right.
You'll see where I'm going in a minute.
I hope. Because right now I don't see, just like you didn't see.
Right. So the next morning, we're out there. And turns out where he was pulling her was a complete drop in the yard. Like if she had just walked along like, all right, yeah, let's go check things out. They both would have been hurt. I mean, it was not a cliff, but it was quite an abrupt drop that was not like labeled in the darkness that there's no way. But it was just crazy how neither of us even had an inkling of that in the dark, even with our flashlights, to know that was there. My point in all of this is how sort of disorienting it is in that pitch blackness, like in those rural areas, no street lights. You kind of do have some light, but it's just eerie. So I feel like whether it was the river or another, not that there were cliffs out in what you sent me in that, what did you call it? In that picture. I can't imagine what he would have run into in terms of like the environment, but it's like something could be right upon him and he wouldn't have seen it until that oh shit moment.
I might cut all 5 minutes of that except for that last 10 seconds because that was really good at the end there. So... I guess we'll see what my mood is. Also, thank you for that.
Oh, anytime. I have more where that came from.
Like I said, I understand why your nightmares are that you can't speak. They also included aerial and ground searches. So helicopters were used. They did infrared technology to look for the heat signatures. So, I mean, they seemed to be trying to find this kid.
Of course.
So additionally, volunteers and search teams combed through miles of surrounding farmland, wooded areas, and more of the roads. Just looking for like clothing, tracks, personal belongings. Nothing was ever found. Now, here is something that is freaking so suspicious. And I mean, I can't imagine how infuriating for the parents, but one of the things that I saw here was that one of the local owners of the farm, of one of the local farms where he went missing, never agreed to let them search his property due to harvest time.
What do you think about that?
Nothing good.
I immediately feel like Brandon is buried on that property, but am I crazy? And this is like
Yes.
a very
Yes and yes.
is this a very serious thing with farmers, farming culture, farming?
Well, okay, but I mean, searching it, like they're not saying we're gonna cut down all of your stocks.
No, but when I'm assuming like what a search endeavor would look like, traipsing through all of these crops, like if that's going to destroy, I don't agree with it.
There must be insurance money for something like that.
Oh
No, I'm just making. But I would think that would be a good insurance thing to have. If something happens to your crops, it's out of your control. Someone goes missing and police and volunteers need to come tear down some of the crops to like take a look. You think like that would be like some type of, it's almost like what a natural disaster would be. You don't think there's farming insurance for that? Who the hell knows? I'm not a farmer.
In theory, it sounds lovely, but
Doesn't
I just feel like farmers get screwed a lot. So it kind of makes me think.
Well, then you're siding with the farmer man.
Well, I'm not. I don't agree with him. I think it's outrageous. I feel like you said terrible for Brandon's parents. Like I can't imagine hearing that. And that also, though, how could a search warrant not have been? How?
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Right, because that's like us being like, no, you're not going to come through our house and make it dirty with your fingerprint powder. I'm not up for that. I don't want to clean afterwards. You know, like that's outrageous. Like it's not up for discussion. We're coming in. So how did this man have the authority to say no, thank you, please?
That's what I'd like to know too. But and I'm thinking, is it purely because with the way that these, you know, different police and laws work, it's like if they don't have enough evidence to believe he's on the property to begin with, then
like
they can't force their way on. Right, because like they obviously there was other land that they did search, so it's like the idea that it's like what makes them necessarily. From what I saw, it wasn't as if the dogs followed it right to that farm. You know what I mean? Did not.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay.
But, so yeah, I literally have in my notes here, some farmer refused to let police search their property due to crop harvesting conflicts, and then I just have WTH. What the hell?
You wrote that in your notes.
So in one case with a search dog, Brandon's scent was tracked to some farming equipment, but I don't know if it was his farming equipment. You know what I mean? The farmer
who refused.
It was just I don't have where the farming equipment was, but it leads me to believe that if the search dog tracked it to this farming equipment, it couldn't have been that farmer's because he didn't let them on his land. I don't know. We're getting into the weeds. We're getting into the crops.
I'm familiar with that.
So, although it does lead me to believe when I look further down on my notes that that farming equipment was the farmer who said, "You ain't coming on my land, buckaroo." So there's a quote from a man named Ken Anderson, an emergency support service worker. And he said, in at least a couple of circumstances, this problem is still in existence, meaning they don't let them come onto the land. They will not allow us on their property. We don't dispute the reason why. We try to work around with a method that would make it acceptable, and we've not been able to come up with a working compromise. What the hell is going on in Minnesota?
Exactly. Minnesotians, please.
Crazy.
Shed some light.
His car keys and cell phone were never, ever found.
Now, I did ask earlier the pinging.
Oh, yes. So I didn't mention that in terms of using those exact words, but they did see that when he made those calls, they were made from where the car was found. Like, it wasn't like he made the call somewhere else and the car was found 20 miles somewhere else. Like, the things line up that the area the car was is where he was supposed to have been as well.
Okay. And then furthermore, I assume, I know the answer to this, no pinging again. It's not like maybe if someone did something to him, they have his phone, it's pinging out in Kansas or... Okay.
No. The search for Brandon extended beyond those initial days, that's nice, into weeks, and authorities conducted repeated searches, which actually, like, some of these searches kind of like would happen like for years. Like one of them happened 2 years later, focusing on any previously missed areas, re-examining all the terrain, looking again at the rivers and the ditches. So volunteers from the local community continued to organize search parties, scouring the fields and the woods, but no further evidence came to light. Over time, the frequency of searches obviously started to diminish, but Brandon's disappearance remains still an open case, and his family has never given up hope that he will be found. Law enforcement believes that Brandon was likely disoriented that night and misjudged his location due to the lack of light and rural environment, as your story so eloquently put it.
Very eloquent. Thank you. Yes. Smooth.
While falling into the river is still a strong possibility, the absence of evidence, including any remains or personal items, has kept that one from being resolved. Brandon's disappearance obviously deeply affected his family, particularly his parents. They have been relentless in their search for answers. Their response has been marked by a combination of heartbreak, frustration, and determination, as they've had to deal with the emotional toll of losing their son. Literally on the phone before he disappears. Like, that is wild.
How helpless they must have felt.
Right.
I'm sure blaming themselves. They shouldn't have, but I'm sure they did. You didn't, I don't think, mention this. And if you're falling into a river unexpectedly in the dark, I don't think your ability to swim necessarily will play a difference. Maybe it will, but it may certainly not. Did anyone ever say, like, could he swim? Like, what did he know?
I never saw. I didn't see anything about that.
Yeah.
Although very astute.
Thank you.
So in interviews with his parents, they did do some interviews, and they just talk about how surreal that night felt. In particular, his dad described the frustration of not being able to find his son, despite the detailed conversation that they had while Brandon was trying to direct them. And his mom shared how she repeatedly tried to call Brandon's phone after it went dead, hoping that each ring would bring him back into contact. And she said that moment, the last contact with their son, has haunted them ever since.
Oh, they can probably still hear it vividly. He just slipped through their fingers.
Right.
And not to say that you can keep a hold on someone because of being on the phone with them, but I feel like it's at least some assurance of, okay, I have them on the phone. I can hear them. I'm not crazy about not knowing where they are. They're in the dark alone in this like isolated location that I'm pretty sure it's not where, he thinks he is. All of those things are so unsettling, but I can at least be on the phone with him. I can hear him. And that he's their child. Like, it's, I don't know. I cannot imagine.
So some of the frustrations with these search efforts, right, were that the initial response from law enforcement, as I said, they were a little reluctant to treat Brandon's disappearance with the level of seriousness that his parents believed was warranted.
They were respecting his rights.
Right.
Yeah.
So some officials reportedly considered the possibility that Brandon had simply walked away voluntarily.
Wanting to start again.
I guess.
Yeah.
Or was possibly too intoxicated, and to return that night, but he'd come back soon. So his parents, however, knew that this was way out of character for their son, and they pressed law enforcement to take immediate action. So this early hesitation led to a delay in large-scale search efforts, which may have impacted the initial search's effectiveness. So in terms of the community reactions to this, it was a pretty close-knit community in Marshall, Minnesota, and the surrounding towns were deeply impacted by Brandon's disappearance. Friends described him, like I said, as good-natured and a responsible young man, making his disappearance just very shocking. In the days and weeks following Brandon's disappearance, the community came together to assist in those search efforts, which, I feel like that's always nice when obviously a community does care enough to help look, and not just law enforcement.
Yes, agreed. They band together.
Right. So a little bit on the public advocacy and legislative efforts, which I feel like we can both appreciate this. One of the most significant actions taken by the Swanson family was their advocacy for changes in state law related to missing persons.
Good for them.
Right. So because of how frustrated they were by those delays they experienced in getting any immediate response from law enforcement when they had first reported Brandon missing, the family worked to push for changes in Minnesota's missing persons protocol. This effort led to the creation and eventual passage of Brandon's Law of 2009. In 2009.
Oh, okay.
So this piece of legislation was designed to improve law enforcement's response times in missing persons cases.
All over, not just Minnesota.
I think it's just in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah.
So Brandon's Law had a significant impact on missing persons cases in Minnesota and has directly helped people by improving the way law enforcement handles reports of missing adults. So I just looked a little bit on, what do they mean by that? So Brandon's Law mandates that police must take missing adult cases seriously from the start.
How insane that even has to be said.
I know.
It's outrageous.
Treating them with the same urgency that they would if it was involving a minor. Investigations must begin immediately, even if there is no evidence of foul play. Law enforcement must file a missing persons report without any waiting period, which had previously been an issue. So this faster response has helped in situations where time is of the essence, which isn't that every situation?
Right.
So in many of these missing persons cases, the first few hours are critical. I've said the critical hours. And the ability and the ability to start searches sooner can mean the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
So, and it's just nice because this law helps you avoid assumptions about missing adults. Assuming that they're an adult, so they just disappeared voluntarily. Right. It's like you can't even make that assumption. Like, you have to start looking.
Right.
Which I think is nice.
I agree.
And it was also good because it actually has started to set a precedent for other states. So although Brandon's Law is specific to Minnesota, it has served as a model for other states looking to improve their response to missing persons cases, especially when it comes to adults.
It reminds me of the Susie case that I did, and she was on the college campus. And
right.
Her parents went above and beyond, like these parents did, to work on the legislation and make those very important, I think, crucial changes.
So the last thing I have is just a couple of the theories. The big one that we talked about was accidentally falling into that river.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, maybe could all of his stuff, and including him, have just been washed away? I guess, but then why does the search dog come up on the other side? I don't know.
That throws me for sure.
So the next one is, an oldie but a goodie, hypothermia.
Right.
Or exposure. He's out there, he gets out of the car for whatever reason. I mean, I guess the reason was he was going to go walk to the town, he thought.
Right.
And so, it's just cold. It's the early morning hours. He's out, in exposure and just gets hypothermia.
But then why the oh shit? Why the sudden...
I'm just saying, man.
I know.
Third, which this one stands out to me, just foul play. Because oh shit could mean anything. Maybe coming across something he wasn't meant to see on a farm that doesn't want cops on the farm.
Good point. Wrong place,
because
wrong
they're
time.
growing potatoes. I don't know if it was potatoes, but the only thing is it would literally have to be what you said, wrong place, wrong time, because no one knew of any enemies Brandon had or threats against him that were made. None of those things were something.
Right. So it would have been totally accidental and god awful timing.
Absolutely.
Awful. If that's what that's insane.
Of course, he could have come across some kind of animal, you had said that might be an oh shit moment,
right.
Which I don't disagree with. And the last is our favorite, intentional disappearance. Did he just... Now, in their defense, it is a less widely accepted theory.
That's actually said.
Right, in this
Good.
case. But of course, one of the tiny theories is that did he just want to start again?
I can't.
You know, I mean, when I was in college, I don't even know if I wanted to call the doctor to make my doctor appointment. I can't imagine, like on the phone, I can't imagine, 19 being like, yeah, I'm gonna move, to Kentucky and
right,
raise me some rabbits.
Right. So. Which also that age is like the age you can just start over. Like
you haven't started.
Exactly. Like, so if you wish to do that, go for it. You don't have to freaking go missing to accomplish it.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I do. The current status is just despite extensive searches, interviews, and years of investigation, Brandon Swanson's disappearance still remains unsolved. Authorities continue to keep the case open, and Brandon's family, God bless them, still remains hopeful that one day they will have answers. I think I saw somewhere, whether it was on an interview or if it was in an article, but it said like they still keep the porch light on.
Oh my God.
Which, I mean,
I can't handle any of that.
Right. So
those people must be in a living nightmare every single day and probably have nightmares of that phone call.
Right. It's insane.
All the, possibilities of what could have happened. Your mind could just go on for hours. I can't even fathom that.
Yeah, it's just very strange. And I was getting conflicting information about this, but if somebody is interested in looking into the case at all, one of the things that I saw some places, but I didn't see it in others, was that there are some, and it wasn't in the picture I showed you, which I found that to be odd, but there are some reports that were saying when they initially found his car, all of the doors were open, which would be super strange.
Why would he have ever
done
that?
Exactly. Like, that is such a weird thing. Like, I mean, could potentially somebody have come across the car later and like wanted to pillage it?
That's exactly
what they did to you and to me.
And ran.
Right. So I don't know, but I just thought that was a little...
That's like
I got
unsettling.
Yeah, it's unsettling, but it's just a little bit of, conflicting information there, but...
Yeah.
So that is the disappearance of Brandon Swanson.
I don't have a good feeling about that ending. I think there was one, and it was not good.
You think there was one what?
An ending. I don't think Brandon's walking around anywhere right now.
Yeah. Okay.
He was so young. I mean, any age would be awful, but this really is heartbreaking.
It is. I would say,
qualities.
Yes. And the only thing, sadly, it's not going to help Brandon, but I mean, I think that Brandon's Law is fantastic.
Oh, yes.
And
if it can help others, that's the point at this
right, because
point.
I mean, and like you said, it's nuts that had to be advocated for, but I don't know. That's just the right to go missing.
We have our rights. Don't need that one, though.
So, all right, well.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
That one was extremely unique. Like, that whole phone call element of being on the phone with, and like trusted people, not some, I don't like a friend who you haven't known long, or I can't think of another example of who you'd be on the phone with that you'd be asking for help, but like, like it's your freaking parents.
Right. Absolutely. Oh. Well, and look, I would like to believe that those parents did absolutely everything they could.
Oh, I'm sure they still do.
Right. One of the things that's just literally spoken of as a potential thing just to think about is like, and I think we've said this before, and I think it's understandable to a certain extent, but everybody was saying he wasn't drunk, he wasn't intoxicated, or like on some type of drugs and whatever. But I think it's also understandable to think about, would your parents make a story sound better? Like, so that they're not kind of besmirching his name, if you will.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, part of me is like, would you want to save, you tell a story immediately to the police and you kind of just are trying to save your son's reputation a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not like it's the craziest thing that, oh my God, he was drunk.
But like not wanting him to come under attack.
Right. And then because I feel like that would also make it feel like maybe, I don't want to say less urgent, but like, oh, you know, he's out there drunk. Like, okay, he'll be back. You know what I mean? Versus like something was really the matter.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, it makes me think of your Marshall case and how the sister was like, look, I don't think he was on anything. I don't think he was using, but I am absolutely not going to sit here and say it was out of the question because I don't know. I loved that response from her.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was so beautifully like candid and accepting and like unconditional love and just being realistic on things. Like there may be things you don't freaking know. Like that just is the way of the world, man.
You need to put that on a t-shirt. We need to make that into a bumper sticker. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in, Chillers. It has been real, as always.
Yes.
So I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. And as always,
stay safe.
And stay chill.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great one. Bye. You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.